Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm happy that you follow the pull in your heart to be curious enough to find out what Uplift self-paced online program is for you. My name is Astuti Martosudirdjo. I am the founder of Uplift My Life Today. It is a transformational space for you to come home back into your heart, your body, and your soul as you go through this unpredictable journey called life. As you may recognize from my name, I am originally Indonesian. From my base in Zurich, Switzerland, I support individuals such as yourself and all others from all corners of the world facing and going through transition, changes, and crisis, feeling much more grounded, centered, focused, present, and empowered. As you know, changes, transitions, and crises are never easy, regardless how many times you have experienced them. They often brings up feelings of fear, confusion, overwhelm, defeat, abandonment, insecurity, hopelessness, loss, and lost, betrayal, grief, imprisonment, paralysis, and many more. Having been on a continuous transformational journey myself for 16 years now and facilitated so many for others, I have come to the conclusion that to remain centered, grounded, focused, and present, as well as empowered during something like this, which are inevitable, that changes will happen many times over during our lifetime, we really have to anchor ourselves deeply in our heart, our body, and our soul, while using our mind to strategize. I'm saying this with conviction that the key for this, to be able to go through changes, feeling empowered, present, focused, grounded, and empowered, you have to do it from your home, which is your authentic self, in your heart, in your body, and to live every day your life in alignment with this. There is no way around it, and there's no shortcut to it. I know that this is overwhelming. I have a lot of clients come to me feeling lost. They no longer reject the idea that they have to transform, but they don't know where to start. To have someone walking next to you, offering you a safe space and facilitated support to ease the process is useful. You don't have to go through transition alone if you do not want to. And this is what I and the programs I have given birth to will support you with. Coming home to my heart, my body, and my soul started off in a very dramatic way. At the end of 2008, I experienced burnout. At the time, I was a person who relied on my mind for my life. I lived here. I lived in my head. I thought about everything. I shut down my intuition. I only believe what my mind says to me. I was a very good problem solver and very skilled in anticipating problems. Moreover, I also had the capability to analyze complex things and come up with good and practical solutions. My mind always connected dots It's just automatically did that. I was most useful in a role that dealt with changes and crisis. However, feelings were not what I was comfortable with. I thought about my feelings, not feeling them. Instead of feeling my feelings, I thought about my feelings. I wasn't listening to my body at all. In fact, I did not even realize that my body had been screaming at me for so many months, asking for help. I still remember the moment I experienced the burnout. It was one morning in early December in 2008. I remember going to work that morning, feeling something is very off with my body. And this is a kind of off feelings that I never experienced before. Of course, there were so many symptoms prior to that morning. Over the course of 2008, particularly the past few months before the actual burnout happened, I lost memories. I would be speaking to someone and suddenly I could not recall the name of this person. In a conversation, I would start off something and I didn't even know what I wanted to say. This happened so often. And I was one that could remember phone numbers of people, would remember conversation with people for years and years with great details. But over the past few months before the actual burnout, it started to disappear and I could not recall easily what this was. What was that I was thinking about? What was the name of the person that I was speaking with? And this was very scary. I also had sleeping problems. I could not sleep. I had skin problems. My stress manifested in itchiness in my body. I also lost my cool and collected nature against small things. I remember also crying in two of important meetings. Thankfully, one of them was teleconference. So I was crying by myself, no, with a person sitting next to me who had been very kind to console me that evening of the call when that happened. But it never happened. I never cried at work. My body was stiff. Every time I went to a massage session, the massage lady always said, your back is as stiff as a plank of wood. And this got worse and worse over time. But I didn't even think that this was my body speaking. Something is off. Something is really, really off. So that morning, back to the beginning of 2008, December, I noticed something was really off in my body. And I started to get really nervous because I never felt this kind of off energy before. When I get to the office, I had scheduled 2 meetings. So I went with the motion. I had the first meeting. And I remember in the first meeting, I started to lose concentration. And I was very glad when the meeting was over. But then the second meeting started not long after that. And I remember that was the worst. It's like I am in and out of the meeting. I'm out of my body, in my body, out of my body, in my body. And I didn't want to create fear or scare because I didn't know what's going on. So I just pushed through finishing the meeting. I remember not saying much. I was agreeing with many things or didn't have any opinions, whatever. I just wanted to get the meeting finished. And when I finished with the meeting, I went to sit at my desk. And I realized my body is shutting down. I could not move. And I just sat there panicking and freaking out, of course. But the body was too tired to move. Until a colleague came in to fetch me around lunchtime. She came and said, let's go for lunch. And I remember staring at her and said, I can't stand up. It was dramatic. It never happened to me before. At the time this happened, I was working for one of the two major banks in Switzerland. If you all remember, the year 2008 was very tough for financial industry globally. And Switzerland was not an exception. It was a major, major crisis in the country. The bank that I worked for had to let go a couple of thousands of people because the share price fell really low, the lowest perhaps in the history of this bank. Not only the employees were worried, the whole country was worried. Consequently, there were a lot of initiatives being put in place in an attempt to save the bank. The mode was save the bank, including save as many employees as possible. And I, working in the recruitment department, I raised my hand to offer support and ended up with me doing more work than a person could handle for an extended period of time. In 2008, I think in average, I was working close to 100 hours per week. There was a lot of stuff going on. And I, being the very mind-driven person, said to myself, I can do this, I can think clearly, I can persevere, I'm strong, all these things, the things that I've been saying to myself for many, many years. Did we do a good job? Did my team and I did a good job? Yes, we did. At a huge cost. The cost is my burnout. Out of all the people in the team that were involved, I was the only one who experienced burnout. Burnout happens when our soul, our mind, our body, and our heart are not well connected anymore. The order from the brain is not well received by the body. And burnout can happen multiple times in one's lifetime. Its impact is so severe and pervasive that it will impact one's self-esteem and self-confidence on top of all the health problems that one may have. That may also last for a very long time. Back in 2008, there was not much information about burnout, unlike today. There was a team in this bank that was helping the employees, and they are trained to diagnose burnout. So I went to see the person, and the person said, you have to stop. You have all the symptoms of burnout, and I do not want to send you to a clinic. He even went on to suggest, if you need to quit this bank, you should do that, because it doesn't make sense. Nobody's gonna miss you if you die at work. I never thought about this. But my body is in agreement with him, was in agreement with him. I was not able to work. My body refused to work. Every time I thought about work, I felt nauseous and anxious. My energy level was very low, and the stiffness on my body was so strong. Fear and anxiety were so dominant in my life at the time. I was a single woman living alone in a country where there's no family around me. None of my family is living in the same country as me, actually. So for me, that felt like a life or death situation. You can imagine. When your body is no longer able to connect with your mind, your feeling was so numb. You have no idea what you want, and you could not sleep because you're so stressed. This was what it was, living like a zombie. And that was enough for me. I vowed to myself to change what I needed, to come back, to rise back, and live in a way that allows me to thrive while staying healthy. I did not want to experience burnout again. Once is enough. Even when, at the time of I made this vow to myself, I did not know what I needed to be accountable for to get myself to that place. I already said yes to whatever it was that I had to be accountable for, because that was the only way up. And in hindsight, this experience was really the beginning of the journey to love myself unconditionally and to live a life that is authentic to me. Burnout took a long time to fully recover from. If you want to not to have it again, you have to dedicate a lot to heal the root causes of this. It took me 2.5 years to reach full recovery. And it started from healing my physical health, followed then by mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The 4 aspects have to be covered. And I dedicate time, energy to change everything I found out along the way that I had to change to be able to come out of it. The thing about the process back then was that I had to figure out the process. There was no manual on how to get out from burnout. I don't think there is still a manual still, but there's more information today, but not back then. I had to figure out and take charge of the recovery process myself and work with different therapists that may offer certain parts of the journey. I'm very grateful for them, but it was a trial and error. I was so adamant not to go back again that I was very willing to invest everything that I have to really get to the root cause. And I learned through this journey that I had to get to the root cause of, among others, self-neglect, my achievement addiction, the patterns of over-reliance to self, then the identity of over-responsibility and unhealthy go-getting that I have played out in my life for many decades until then. I was 34 years old when I experienced the burnout. So I have lived for 34 years, driven by fears, unconscious fears, and limiting beliefs that eventually led me to burnout. Burnout happened because I made choices. I'm the one who made the choices that led me to that. Yes, there are external pressure and stress, but I'm still the one who made choices for me, right? These unconscious fears and limiting beliefs helped me to get to where I was. And when I experienced burnout, I was actually recognized as one of the top 2% performer in the bank that I was working for. But the cost was so huge. I was successful, but was also empty. Empty of energy, empty of fulfillment, and empty of health. This 2.5 years journey of recovery was so intense because I had to undergo a painful divorce. I divorced myself from limiting beliefs, unconscious thought patterns, unhealthy habits that in the past actually brought me to a success. So for a period of my life, these stuff that bring me to burnout was useful. But going forward, I cannot be married to this anymore. I had to go through a big divorce. with a part of myself. I had to divorce my old identity and start the process of reconnecting with my authentic self. And I was asking myself, what am I if I do not achieve, if I cannot achieve anymore? Who am I if I do not achieve or cannot achieve anymore? It's very fundamental, unearthing, humbling process. I had to process so many deep and heavy emotions and feelings that I was so scared and never touched about before. Crying was really difficult until burnout. Okay. And in the process, while I was going through and processing all the different emotions, there are so many kinds of emotions in there, from guilt to shame to anger to grief to fear to discouragement, all these things. I had to go to a really deep place within myself, find a way to get into the deep place of myself to forgive myself and to forgive others who directly and indirectly contributed to making me who I was then, with all this identity and programs that led me to burnout. This process led me to make peace with my decisions and the consequences of my decisions up to that moment. I realized only when I am able to get to a place that have more peace than any other things, that I can open up a new chapter. And this is not happening overnight. It is an ongoing journey. The whole thing feels like a rebirth. So I understand. If you are here, you're going through something big and you feel like you cannot do this alone. I get it. You may not experience burnout. You may experience a loss of job, a loss of health, a loss of relationship, or a loss of somebody that you feel so connected to. Or you may even move to a new country, starting over, getting married, something big. It doesn't have to be negative changes. It could be also positive changes, but it needed you to connect to yourself differently. I understand. My journey started with a dramatic, not great one, but it brings me to a much more fulfilling life. So I understand if you're here, you're listening to this video, is because you feel like it's clear that you want to go through the change, but you need support. And I'm hoping that my story could actually convey a message to you that all those pains and sufferings, negative emotions, the hard process, the one that makes you cry in the evening or any time of the day, can change. They're temporary as long as you go through a deep enough process to change the unconscious beliefs, unconscious limiting beliefs, and to be willing to part ways, to divorce your old self in the process. So now, 15 years after the burnout, I am happy to let you know that I have never experienced anything close to burnout in 2008. I have been making more wise and loving choices in my life that needs more courage than ever before, demanding more discipline in execution, more patience in moving through the process, and regularly leaving any comfort zones that I had. But I could do that with much more centeredness, groundedness, present, more focused, and feeling more empowered. I do that till today, and I am still evolving. If you had known me for a number of years, you probably would seen that evolution happening. So in 2015, I finally answered my soul calling to shift my life completely. I started making the movements to lead a soulful, authentic life and support others who want to do the same. So that's what I've been doing since then. So I empathize. I do empathize with what you're going through. And I do hope that what I can offer, either a personal session with me or any program that I have been giving birth to, could ease your journey. You do not have to go through this alone and feeling lost in the process. You don't. I am here whenever you are ready.